You're listening to Dirty Feet, a podcast from No More Radio.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
Hosted by,
animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna move you.
The Griffintown Project is an event taking place over the span of 2 days in early May here in Montreal, in, of course, Griffintown. It's a celebration of performance and visual arts. If you're not familiar with the area, Griffintown is in the south of Montreal, and it used to be a very more industrial area. And recently, there have been discussions about buildings being torn down, new apartment buildings going up, and a big effort by the community to kind of conserve some of these older, beautiful buildings and reinvent them rather than discard them completely. And I believe this has something to do with the project because it's taking place in one of these buildings. It was an old New City Gas building. There's a loft space, and it's being inhabited by artists for this weekend in May. We're going to be speaking today to two people involved in the project. The project was launched by a pair of students from Concordia University studying in the Contemporary Dance Department, Michelle Slatterly and Sophia Wright. They are both co-producing the project. Michelle will also be a choreographer for some of the work presented over the weekend. And Sophia, who we have here today, is one of the creators of the Griffintown Project. Also, we have Sarah Grenier, who is the curator for the Griffintown Project, who is primarily concerned with the visual art aspect of what's going to be happening. So they're going to be showing video, there's going to be installation, paintings, and, of course, dance. So let's start by talking about the reason that this project got started, and maybe, Sophia, you can let us know where that came from.
Yeah, for sure. It actually started because Michelle and myself wanted to create a work for independent study. And for the outcome of our personal creations, we didn't want to just present it in sort of an informal setting at Concordia. It seemed almost too easy. And considering the amount of work we've put into the Griffintown Project, sometimes that seems like it would have been a nice option. But I'm really, really excited about the fact that we decided to work together to make a presentation that was our work, but also something that branched out and reached other communities and other people. And what's exciting, too, is that Sarah is actually from UQAM. So we have some French representation and also some students who we've never worked with before, which it's hard sometimes to get outside of your insular community. So we're really, really excited about that.
Now, I'm extra curious about the space, of course, that you've chosen, and you've also chosen to name the project after the space that you're using, calling it the Griffintown Project. How important was this location to what you were creating?
It was pretty important. I feel that some of the works that we've accepted, they've all been based off of a theme, phase 2 or phase 2, which is sort of was important for Michelle and I, and for Sarah as well, if I can speak for her, because we are sort of transitioning out of Concordia or UQAM and hopefully into this real world, whatever that may be. And also there's sort of this transition, I think, that is reflected in Griffintown, and we're just trying to connect to the community in which we're presenting.
The space is amazing, and I'm going to use it as well. En fait, pour placer les artistes, l'espace va vraiment être utilisé pour être en connexion avec ce que les artistes vont faire. Donc, j'ai vraiment hâte de commencer à placer les trucs, puis de voir comment on peut créer les liens en fait entre les projets qu'on a choisis, puis l'espace qu'on habite.
Now, Sarah, most recently, I know that you've curated the Wild Side art exhibit for the festival at Centaur in January. I'm wondering, talking about this border between performance art and visual art, is this the first time you've kind of curated for that specific environment?
Oui, exactement. C'est la première fois que je fais un peu des deux. Ça pose plein de problèmes super intéressants. J'ai hâte de m'y mettre, de mettre les mains à la pâte. C'est la première fois que je fais du vidéo aussi, donc ça aussi, ça m'intéresse beaucoup. Puis, c'est pas la première fois, par contre, que je travaille et en anglais et en français. Puis, je trouvais ça intéressant que Sophia en parle tout à l'heure parce que c'est quelque chose que j'essaie de faire. J'habite juste à côté de l'espace ici, dans un espace super bilingue. Donc, j'habite à Montréal, mais je suis beaucoup à l'UQAM, qui est très francophone. Puis, au Centaure, milieu très anglophone. Donc, c'est quelque chose qui m'habite puis que je trouvais très intéressant de faire pour... je trouvais très important que ce projet-là soit bilingue, puis qu'on puisse travailler à créer des liens entre justement Concordia puis l'UQAM.
And there are two different facets to some extent here. There's the performing arts and there's the visual arts. Has there been a lot of links created between the two? I think you've mentioned before that there will be visual arts aspects in some of the performing arts presentations. How exactly was that link created? Was it something that was pushed by the organizers, or was that something that just naturally evolved?
In terms of bringing different disciplines together, I think, well, in my personal work, I'm moving more towards visual art. I'm getting an interest in photography and in video. So that's definitely going to be shown in my work. But I think in general, we're trying to just create a space that can exist for both and have these people who don't necessarily know about the other and come together and create those connections. I don't think it was necessarily critical for us to have, it wasn't essential for us to have those those links already existing. We're happy to kind of create a space where that can become.
Non, c'est exactement dans la création de liens. Puis en plus, quand on a fait l'appel aux artistes, on demandait de tout et de n'importe quoi. On demandait des arts visuels, on demandait de la danse, on demandait du vidéo, on demandait de la performance et tout ce qui se trouvait entre ces médiums-là. Donc, on s'est retrouvés quand on a fait le choix avec plusieurs beaux problèmes parce qu'il y avait plein de choses qu'il fallait qu'on mette en place puis qu'on savait pas exactement comment jouer avec, donc on a eu plein de beaux problèmes à régler. Puis en tout cas, c'est vraiment justement, ça va être très intéressant pour ça. Puis on a de la danse, on a de la musique, on a de la peinture, comme vous l'avez dit, on a, comme on l'a déjà mentionné, on a vraiment beaucoup de trucs qui normalement se rencontrent pas. Donc c'est super intéressant de jouer avec ça.
Speaking of space, so it's this beautiful loft space with old wooden floors and some posts and tall ceilings. And you're talking about how there's a lot of things inhabiting this space. In what way, literally, are we going to be inhabiting this space? Do you have dance on a stage? Do you have art on the walls? Or are you changing it up a little bit?
We are putting down a dance floor, mostly for the safety of the dancers, but there will be pieces that will happen out of this more, I guess, traditional constructed space in the loft.
On a aussi la performance, on a un vernissage qui va avoir lieu, c'est un 5 à 7 le 2 mai. Puis dans ce vernissage-là, il y a des artistes qui vont faire, il va y avoir de la performance qui va se passer au travers des gens, donc qui va habiter vraiment l'espace, puis qui va jouer avec la présence des gens aussi. Sinon, il y a toujours le fait que tout est au même endroit, dans le sens que les œuvres vont être là pendant qu'il y a la danse et donc il va falloir jouer avec l'espace pour que tout cohabite bien ensemble puis que que tout fonctionne bien ensemble finalement parce une fois que l'espace va être placé, il va falloir le penser aussi avec du public puis ça va être de moduler tout ça ensemble.
If I understand correctly, the schedule for the weekend is that on the 2nd you have the 5 à 7, the vernissage that Sarah just mentioned, and then you have the live performance of the more choreographic work from 8 to 10, which repeats again on the 3rd, but you also have the gallery space open from 1 to 8 on the 3rd. However, you won't have the installation work happening at that time.
Well, some of it, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should mention too, it's not just a dance for the show that starts at 8. We also have some other I don't want to spoil
it's a big surprise. We don't want to talk about it, but it's going to be really interesting and it's a big party.
Yeah, we have a fun mix show coming up, so that's all we can say for the moment.
And what can you tell us about that lineup, about who will be presenting works? Is there any like choreographers or performers that you can mention?
Without any spoilers, of course.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if any of you were at the Bougie Cabaret or the mashup, but we have some return performances, or I should say return choreographers. So maybe you saw Michaela Gerussi and Emily LeBlanc. And they'll be presenting something. It's been reworked and it's been very much changed, but they'll be presenting something at the Griffintown performance at 8 p.m.
This is their line dance experiment.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, it's a kind of a calm, hypnotic unison work that they've been doing with a variety of kind of fun music.
Yeah, they have a composer who's working with them too. So that's John Jacob Courtney from the Electroacoustic Department at Concordia. So that should be a good time.
Puis sinon, du côté des arts visuels, une des œuvres que j'aime particulièrement et qui me fait vraiment plaisir d'avoir, c'est donc Ray Pilgrim qui est une installation photo qui avait été présentée pour en fait c'est une étudiante en photographie, donc c'est une œuvre qui avait été présentée pour son cours, mais vraiment remodifiée pour s'adapter à l'espace qu'on lui a offert. Donc il va y avoir plusieurs photographies en lien avec des histoires, puis c'est vraiment une œuvre qui amène une certaine idée de jeu, parce que les photos sont reliées au texte mais sans que ça soit vraiment indiqué, donc c'est vraiment intéressant à voir, puis c'est vraiment une œuvre qui s'adapte au lieu, donc ça c'est, en tout cas pour moi je peux pas encore parler de réussite, mais ça serait une des réussites du projet, parce que c'est ça, là, ça va aller habiter ce lieu-là, puis ça vient d'ailleurs, donc c'est super intéressant. Donc il y a aussi la partie de les vidéos qui vont être ensemble, que je trouve super intéressant à mettre ensemble, parce que ça c'est vraiment il va y avoir des vidéos de gens francophones et de gens anglophones mis ensemble, présentés tous ensemble en fait. Puis il va y avoir Chloé, Francis qui sont entre autres, il y a 4 vidéos qui vont être là, dont ces 2-là que j'ai particulièrement aimées. Puis en fait, toutes les informations s'en viennent tranquillement sur notre site, puis j'ai l'impression que le lien va être partagé sur votre site. Donc voilà.
So Sophia, in addition to producing this event and in part curating some of the material as well, you're also presenting your own work. Is that right?
Yeah, I am. The full version of my piece that I'm working on is going to be presented Sunday, April 27th at Concordia in the Black Box, which is on the 7th floor of the John Molson building. That'll be at 7:30 p.m. But I wanted to have a space where I could sort of take over and not be so concerned about the links with other works, and maybe a little bit more selfish in a sense, but also to really let my work kind of expand spatially and in terms of duration as well. So an excerpt of that will be presented at the Griffintown Project, for which I'm really excited. But the full work will be the week before, April 27th.
Can you give us some insight into that work?
Yeah, for sure. It's based off of some photos and video I took while traveling through Turkey. And it's a play, I guess, between sort of image and movement, and kind of how movement can be still and create images, or even with movement you have images, and how there's so much movement captured like vice versa in still images. And it's sort of a play on memories and impressions, because obviously I was only there for 2 weeks, so I don't have a full idea of what it is to be in Turkey or Turkey in general, but I had all of these impressions that are really lasting, and they could be just simple small moments, but I think they're really powerful. So it was a chance for me to let that have its life again, I guess, through my filter.
And you mentioned that you've been moving more and more towards a visual arts aspect to performance. How did you bring this new research in your work?
I have 2 performers. I should say Caroline Shea and Lucy Fandel. So I do still have a link to performance and movement and dance. But this work is definitely more about the space and about the images. I'm going to be taking the black box, and hopefully you'll be walking in and not recognize it. I'll have this place completely transformed for this work. And there'll be video projection and projection of images as well. I presented another version of it actually at Nuit Blanche at Mainline through Art Matters. So maybe some of you have a sneak preview from that, but yeah.
Speaking of Art Matters, you also curated an event for that festival.
Yeah, and it was interesting because it was along similar lines. We had less focus on visual art, but it was, again, a real mixed bag. It was presented at Sala Rosa with Pascal Janssen and myself. We were the curators. And we had some circus pieces, we had some theater, we had some clowns, a lot of dance. It was quite a mixed performance, and it really, really worked well. I was surprised at how smooth the evening went and how it seemed to be quite a success. So I'm excited to have another opportunity and even expand it further to include video and to include, so actually we had video at Sala Rosa, but to include the visual art for sure.
To speak of opportunity as well, you've kind of found these opportunities, you've sought them out, and in the case of this independent study, you've created it for yourself. And this is on the heels of the curation conference that Dina DeVita put on a couple of weeks ago. If there was such a program, would you jump? Would you study curation at university if given the opportunity?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. I think it's a path I would like to explore further. And for the moment, I feel like I'm, like you said, kind of jumping on opportunities and kind of creating it for myself, but I'm learning as I'm going, and it'd be nice to have an opportunity to really learn in depth before just jumping into the real world.
Je suis étudiante en histoire de l'art, donc c'est sûr que être commissaire, c'est quelque chose qui m'intéresse vraiment beaucoup, puis c'est quelque chose que j'ai aussi j'essaie de faire la même chose là, sauter sur les opportunités, puis de voir où ça peut m'amener, puis parce que j'avais fait l'exposition inaugurale au Centaure pour le Wildside, Sophia et Michel sont venus me voir, donc ça m'a amené à faire The Griffintown Project, puis là on sait pas, peut-être que The Griffintown Project va m'amener à faire autre chose, donc oui, définitivement c'est quelque chose que je fais, puis j'ai beaucoup de projets en branle, donc rien de trop concret pour l'instant, mais j'ai beaucoup d'idées, donc je travaille là-dessus beaucoup. C'est sûr que je vais être très présente.
I'm wondering what you've learned from each other, just kind of attacking it from different perspectives, from kind of the choreographic background and the art history background, and Sarah having a very specific relationship with curation, and Sophia kind of learning as you go. What have you learned from each other in your styles of curation?
I think for myself, it's something I always recognized, but I think Sarah's much more in touch with how to create a whole with all of the pieces. And I think her art history background is definitely helpful in that. Yeah, I'm just so thankful to have her as part of the team. It's been really awesome.
Well, thanks. En fait, moi, c'est la première fois que je travaillais en équipe. Donc, en plus d'apprendre, puis en fait, je connais pas grand-chose à la danse. Donc, c'était vraiment intéressant de quand on parlait des discussions pour choisir les artistes, c'était vraiment intéressant de voir, moi je voyais, je comprenais ça, puis là, finalement non, parce que vous avez un background différent, donc vous m'amenez telle perspective, puis telle perspective. Donc, ça m'a vraiment permis d'apprendre plus dans ce domaine-là, en fait, ça m'a permis d'apprendre aussi comment moi je travaillais, parce que j'ai tout le temps travaillé tout seul, donc ça m'a donné un miroir de je fais ça comme ça, peut-être que finalement je devrais faire ça comme ça. Puis c'est ça m'a permis de me mettre un peu à part dans mon travail pour plus travailler sur comment tout mettre ensemble. En fait, c'est drôle que Sophia mentionne ça, parce que en fait, c'est quelque chose que je pensais que je faisais pas, donc c'est quelque chose que j'ai appris que je faisais. C'est bien.
You've mentioned the importance of the space that was chosen for the presentation, and Griffintown is an area of Montreal that has a really rich history. Is that something that you've delved in a bit, looked at its past history, at how it's been changing in past years, and is this something that has been shared with the artists as a sort of common source of understanding of the space?
Well, in our call-out, we definitely referred to this, and I don't think we've necessarily shared in-depth research with people we accepted to our show, but it's definitely a common understanding. I feel, especially in the emerging artists demographic, I think Griffintown is on the radar for everyone, and I think it's good. We want to keep life in that area and encourage projects and events like this. Allison mentioned earlier that the space is used for artists, like for us, for this weekend, but it's also used by other artists in the area. There's Peter Trotsmuir, who has his workspace just beside. So we're definitely not alone, and I think we're just one small group of people who are really committed to investing in Griffintown before the condos take over. I think another note that's interesting to point out is the fact that also in relation with how we're kind of learning as we go, I think it is also similar with the space. We're not provided with a theater that has a sound system and lights and everything. So we're really doing everything from our own sort of initiative. And I think it's also been good for us to learn other aspects and how to put on a show if you don't have resources. And I think that's so important too for emerging artists. You don't necessarily have access to top of the line equipment or full technician hours and everything. So just kind of doing it on our own has been really important, I think.
Oui, c'est vrai, parce qu'on part vraiment de zéro. Donc, il faut, par exemple, avec les arts visuels, ben, c'est bien le fun de mettre les œuvres sur le mur, mais il faut qu'elles soient éclairées, il faut qu'elles soient, c'est toutes des choses auxquelles faut penser, puis il faut essayer de prévoir avant que ça arrive. Donc oui, en tout cas, de mon côté, c'est très, très intéressant, puis j'ai hâte de voir comment on va réussir on est dans la course finale avant le 2 et 3 mai, donc j'ai hâte de voir comment on va y arriver.
I think too, we don't want to have a product that's too finished and too perfect. I think that's part of the beauty of Griffintown, is that we want to respect the space for what it is and still be able to transform it to something that's usable for our project. So it's kind of finding a middle ground between, like we said before, like putting down a dance floor, was that the best choice, or should we have the works really be in the space like as they are, you know? So those are all questions we're asking ourselves, and it's been really fun.
Through this process, have you been mentored by anyone? Have you been seeking outside help for a pretty big endeavor?
I think it's important at this point to mention Dominic Roussel. He's providing us with the space. He's managing the space, and he's been really helpful in terms of the space itself and giving advice on the technical side. He's done other productions. He works with the Festival Bouche ici, as well as Michael Montanaro. He's the supervising professor for both Michelle and I for our independent studies. So he's just been a wealth of resources and so helpful. I think I should also mention this point too, that we've received funding from different grants through Concordia, FASA, so the Fine Arts Student Alliance, the CUSPG, the Special Concordia University Small Projects Grant, as well as the CCSL, which is the Concordia Council on Student Life. So they've all given us funding, for which we're so grateful.
Sinon, de mon côté, ben c'est pas un projet, tu sais, on m'a approché pour ça, mais c'est pas un projet que je fais pour l'école, ou donc oui, je vais demander autour de moi, mais j'ai vraiment été plus solitaire de ce côté-là, donc non, en fait, j'apprends beaucoup par moi-même, en fait.
It is, I think, also important to mention that this is not something that popped up in a month. How long have you been working on this project?
Michelle and I started talking about it in September when we were doing our applications for our independent studies. And yeah, since then we've been working on it pretty intensely, you know, since October. So it's been quite a long process. Sarah joined us a little later.
In October, yeah. So, oui, c'est ça. Finalement, c'était une question de s'entendre, premièrement, parce que c'est leur projet, puis je rentrais là-dedans, puis je savais pas exactement qu'est-ce qu'ils voulaient. Donc, ça a été du travail. Pas très agréable, mais ça a été du travail quand même. Donc, puis après ça, de voir, OK, de faire le call-out pour les artistes, puis d'essayer de voir comment on peut dealer avec toutes les demandes qu'on a reçues. Puis là, on est vraiment dans le dernier mille, c'est plus concret peut-être actuellement, dans le sens qu'on est rendu à placer les choses sur les murs, à faire les derniers, on était dans les posters, les flyers, les banners en fin de semaine. Donc on est vraiment dans le plus concret, puis là ça s'en vient rapidement, très rapidement.
We've been speaking with Sophia Wright and Sarah Grenier about the Griffintown Project on the episode today. And just a reminder of when this is all taking place. It's going to be May 2nd and 3rd. That's 2014 here in Montreal. It's in Griffintown, of course. It's 141 Rue St. Anne, suite number 206. And you've got the vernissage happening from 5 to 7 on the first day, the 2nd there. And then you've got a live performance happening from 8 to 10. And this is, we've been assured, not just choreographic performance, but other performance as well with surprise guests. And then the following day, the 3rd, you have the gallery space open from 1 to 8, where you're welcome to stop on by. And then from 8 to 10 is the show all over again. Thank you both so much for joining us today, and we're really looking forward to the show.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Dirty Feet is recorded every week at the Montreal Improv Theatre. Check them out at montrealimprov.com.
Dirty Feet est produit et animé par
Produced and hosted by Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
You can find out more about our show at nomoreradio.com, follow us on Twitter at Dirty Feet, and find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast.
Vous pouvez écouter tous nos épisodes sur notre site web ou vous pouvez vous abonner également sur iTunes à notre podcast.
Listen to past episodes on website or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
While you're there, be sure to give us a rating and or leave a comment to help us spread the word.
Tune in next week for a whole new show.